Hi everybody, Lauren here. So I've been getting quite a few questions about how I have been making masks, so I figured I'd go ahead and make a tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to talk about the different materials that I'm using to actually make the mask, the design that I'm utilizing, as well as different options for filters. So for this particular design, I am using a pouch so that they are reusable. I can wash them, and then the key there is that I am replacing the filter with every single wear. And so I'll talk a little bit about the different filters and the effectiveness of those. I've done research on the effectiveness of that, and of course I'm going to show you what research I got that from, because you're going to get a different story everywhere. The one thing I really want to remind you about, the whole reason that you would be wearing a mask in the COVID-19 situation, is that it is spread by droplet. So what we're trying to prevent here is that whenever you're in public, you don't want to touch something that has droplets on it, or talk to somebody and possibly have them spread droplets to you, and then go and touch your mouth or your nose or your eyes. That's going to be the biggest concern here. And of course, whenever you're dealing with a homemade mask, anytime you inhale, you're going to have air coming in through the sides. You can't really prevent that. This is not a fail-safe solution, and this is really just another precaution that you can take whenever you're not social distancing, so please keep that in mind. I will be showing you how to make a basic pouch design mask. I have also done 3 different designs for how to fix this onto your head, so I'll discuss those later. But this is a pouch design, so there's fabric on both sides, and it is open, so that you can put your filter in and replace it for everywhere, which is very important to get the most effectiveness out of a homemade configuration. The first thing that I did is went out and got some cute cotton fabrics. I do have dogs that I make bandanas for, so I already had a decent collection. I went ahead and bought a few extra. These are all cotton because you do want something that is breathable. So I've chosen my fabric, and now I'm going to go ahead and measure. For women's, I am doing a 6.5 by 12 inch measurement, or 16 by 30 centimeters. Because my brother has a very large head, I went ahead and did a 7.5 by 14 measurement for men's, and I will show that to you later in the video. So what I've done is take a very basic ballpoint pen and go ahead and make those measurements and put my marks on the fabric. Now that my fabric is cut, the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and fold my fabric in half, what in school we called hamburger style. And the reason I'm doing this is that I'm trying to make a crease in the fabric just so I know approximately where that halfway mark is. You can see that here. So now I can start thinking about pleating. This is going to be the front that faces out to the world, and this is going to be the interior that faces toward my mouth. So what we're going to do is we're going to start pleating. I'm going to do a simple pleat around here, and that's going to be approximately where the chin hits. And then I'm going to do box pleat up around here, and that's approximately where the nose is going to hit. So I'm not actually measuring whenever I do this. I'm just going ahead and folding, and then I'm going to start pinning. So I've gone ahead and pinned those pleats. They don't have to be huge. This is really up to you how big you want to make them. The one thing I want you to really be mindful of is that you leave at least about 1.5 centimeters here, because you will be folding down the fabric in order to close this off. So we've done 1/2 of the front face. Now we are going to mirror along the y-axis and do the same pleat here, and again a box pleat here. Now I have mirrored my pleating approximately across this vertical axis, because this will be folded over. Once again, doesn't have to be perfect. So I went ahead and stitched that bit. So I've got my box pleat about another 1.5 centimeters away, another pleat. This is approximately where I'm going to have that center fold, small pleat, box pleat, and of course on both ends I've got space to fold over and close off my edge. And what I'm using is just a very basic stitch. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate around and I'm going to go ahead and repeat this on the other end. And the main thing that I'm looking for is just that my length across here is approximately the same as the length across here after I add in my pleating. Frankly, my pleats don't have to be perfectly lined up on either side. We're not going to fashion show, so keep that in mind. All right. Went ahead and pinned down the other end, and I folded over to make sure that yes, they are approximately going to be the same length. They don't have to be perfect, of course. Okay, I will sew that up. So the next step is going to be to fold down this top edge to go ahead and finish it. Same with this bottom edge, and it's going to look like this. And just so you can see a comparison, this is the sizing that I've done for the guy's mask. My brother happens to have a particularly large German head, so he asked for me to make it a little bit larger for him, and that's why I added in the extra inch in both the vertical and horizontal directions whenever I did the design for him. Also, whenever you are stitching up your pleats, you may notice that you have little areas like this where it pinched up in the foot. Don't worry about that. Whenever we put in the elastic and go in to fold this under to make the pouch, we're going to get rid of that. I switched over to a brighter piece of fabric just for the sake of showing you how to put in the ribbons or the elastic. It is going to be easier to see the black against this fabric. So there's a few different options. You can do the elastic. This is going to go over the ears. This can be annoying to some people. It does kind of squeeze on the ears, and frankly, I did a 3/8 of an inch size elastic. I would recommend going down. So I would do 1/4 of an inch elastic because this is a bit rough. I measured this to 9 inches. And I would highly recommend that if you're doing the over-the-ear method, it is going to vary a bit per person, so kind of watch out for that. The other thing that I did, so you can see the ear loops and how it looks whenever it's installed here, and I will post a photo of myself in one of those down in the bottom. I also did a design where I put loops on the side, and this is just with ribbon. I found this a really great way to go because I was able to find a large amount of ribbon for really inexpensive at Joann's Fabrics last Saturday. And then what I did on the other side was just a long piece of ribbon so that I can bring this around my head and tie it. And again, I'll show you what that looks like in a photo. The other design that I did for my mom is just to have the ribbon, and I left it uncut so that she can cut it however she wants, and that way she can have one that is going to tie around the nape of her neck, and then the other is going to tie a little bit closer to the crown, and she can divide her hair and hide it under there so it's a little bit more tucked and a little bit more professional, which is better suited for her job right now. Now we'll proceed in installing these elastics onto this piece. The first thing you're going to do is go ahead and take this unfinished edge that we secured purely for our pleats, and the reason I did that is because the next step involves so much of doing elastics that if you did all of it in one step, it'd be a bit too much for me. I'm also not an experienced sewer, but I'm assuming if you're watching this, you are also in the same boat as I am. So let's go ahead and fold this down and okay, I've folded in my edges, and also while I am sewing this up, it is going to be the step where I am finalizing that pouch design. So whenever I'm finalizing that pouch design, that's whenever I want the elastic to go in. So I am going to put my elastic up here at the very top, and I'm going to make sure that it is sticking in about 2 centimeters, and I'm going to tack that in. All right, I have my elastic sandwiched in there and tacked down. Now, at this bottom part of the fold, I'm going to put in the other piece of the elastic. Just make sure that what you're doing is flattening this out and that the top side is going to be the top here. That way you don't have any odd twist whenever you're putting it onto your face. I'll put him in. Now that other end is sandwiched in there and tacked down. Remember to keep about 2 centimeters in there because we need quite a bit of coverage to keep this taut whenever we sew it. And I went ahead and got rid of those other pins because they were just temporary. And I used a third pin to make sure that everything's rolled over for whenever I do this stitching in here. Because we're dealing with the elastic and you want to make sure you get a lot of coverage whenever you're stitching this, I did switch to a zigzag stitch. Yes, I don't have the most beautiful sewing skills, but that's okay. We're not doing Paris Fashion Week. So what I used for this, there's a few different settings on my sewing machine. I went over here to the zigzag that does stitches in between. So I'm actually getting 3 stitches across this way. It's really hitting on the elastic. The default setting on my machine is a 6. I took this down to about a 3.5, sometimes a 3. It really just depended on the fabric and what I was doing. Of course, go ahead and test that out beforehand. So now I'm going to go ahead and stitch on this one. And what I did was start with a single stitch to do my backward and forward to make sure it was secure. Removed my pen. I then stitch in this direction to make sure I cover the full 2 centimeters of my elastic. I turn it around, stitch back in this direction, make the corner, come down, stitch inward and back out with that crisscross. And then I go ahead and take it to the single point and do a small stitch inward and outward just to make sure everything's secure and double checking that I don't run over onto my elastic. Not the most beautiful stitch, but hey, I was holding my phone and sewing at the same time. And this is going to hold it nice and tight because you have so many anchor points whenever you're using this style of stitch. Also, if you have a very basic machine that only does a single stitch, I know that Walmart has those for about 20 bucks. I used to make costumes with those whenever I was in college because that's all I could afford. You could do a little bit of a zigzagging with that, moving it around. Also, you could do multiple strokes. So be creative with that. The main thing and the main reason for this crisscrossing stitch is just really going to be at that elastic or the ribbon to make sure that it stays secure for you. Now I'm going to come over to the other side and complete that portion. So now your mask is done. This is where we get into the discussion of different filters. So if you wear just the mask, so this is 2 layers of cotton because it is that pouch design. So this is totally up to you on what you want to do about filters. If you were to wear just this, it has about a 33% effective rating. I read that on a research paper that came out in 2016. I'm going to go ahead and link it right here down in the bottom and take from that what you will. Again, I really see this as the primary thing being that you are not touching your nose not touching your mouth, because COVID-19 is spread through droplet. Now, the other option that you have is to go ahead and utilize this pouch and put in a filter. The reason that it is a pouch and something is not sewn in is that if you're going to use a filter, your filter needs to be replaced every single wear. That means if you were to wear this mask for one day, at the end of the day, you need to take your filter out and it goes in the trash. It does not go into the washing machine. It goes into the trash. Filters are not your place to save money. So go ahead and get over that. Also, whenever you're going to wash this, you want to wash it at high heat, or you want to put it in the dryer at high heat. That's another bit of information that I read. I'll go ahead and link the citation right there. So, different filter options. I went ahead and purchased what they use to make surgical masks, including the N95, and that is called melt-blown polypropylene. And you can get melt-blown polypropylene in a few different forms. This is actually a material that is designed for use in shops, like garages, to clean up oil whenever it gets on the ground. And so it is not designed to pick up liquids. That's why it's so important for droplets. And you can use this as a filter. The one thing that I really want you to think about whenever you're putting in your filter is consider how large your mask is going to expand to whenever it's actually on your face, because we do have that pleating for the nose and also for the chin. So please think about that whenever you're cutting out your filter, and you must throw away your filter. In a pinch, there's a few different things that have been discussed. I know that you can actually use your toilet paper hoard, and if the toilet paper has been wet and then dried out, that's going to give you a more similar effect to how the melt blown doesn't have edges of fabric of material coming off of it, how it's all plastered down through heat. That's what melt blown means. But of course, I haven't found any research that supports that, so take from it what you will. So as our little fox in this particular mask is modeling, I do always wear glasses, and I recommend that you think about something to cover your eyes. I was quite shocked whenever COVID-19 came out, and I realized how much I touch my face throughout the day. First thing I started by doing was not wearing mascara, because I noticed that if I was touching my eyes, it was typically because I was messing with some sort of mascara situation. So I immediately cut that out, and then I've got my eyes covered here, and nose and mouth. Yeah, the elastic can be a bit much for some. And on that note about elastic, and especially after seeing how wild people have gone for elastic as of this weekend, I just got back from Joann's and elastic's pretty much gone. I really want to highlight what you can do with ribbon. I honestly find it much more comfortable, and I was a little thrown off whenever I started making the mask and people were asking me for elastic, because I only had a little bit of elastic from another project. I had originally bought ribbon to do my projects with. So I'm going to show you a little bit of what I've done with the ribbon, a few different design ideas. So basic idea is that you have your pouch up here, and you have your ribbon that is going to tie around the crown of the head. And this can be easily hidden underneath the hair. That's what I like about it. The one thing you'd want to watch out for is that whenever you do tie in your hair, you can easily catch hair in there. And the way that I did the measurements for this and to have enough in order to do a bow is that I measured around my nose, around my entire head, and I added 14 inches. That way I've got 7 inches on each end to go ahead and tie my bow. Then for the bottom portion, I measured from my chin around the nape of my neck all the way around. And again, I added 14 inches to that. That's how I did my measurements for this particular design. And of course, the pitfall is getting the knot in your hair a little bit. It can be annoying. It can also take up quite a bit of ribbon. So another design that I played with and that I think I'm going to continue with is that you put a loop to the side on one side, and I did these long enough so that it would land behind my ear, and then that way the string that is coming around, I can do a simple single knot, and it's just behind my ear. I have the strings draping and they're smaller. So that's going to look like this. So again, less hair in the way. You do have the string hanging down here. Could be a little annoying to some. I like it because it's easier for me to untie. I could actually look at this in a mirror and work with it. Also, you can completely customize the size whenever you're dealing with ribbon. One of the things that I have come across is that whenever you are using elastic, especially a thicker elastic such as I have, the 3/8, what I measured for fitting my head doesn't necessarily fit other people's heads. If you're dealing with a 1/4 inch or smaller, you might have a little bit more luck, but there's a pretty small margin of error there whenever you're dealing with elastic on that short of a span. So watch out for that. And also there's some really cool stuff coming out right now as far as what you can do to help in the medical field. So if you want to contribute, I know that there's some really cool programs going on at a few of the different fabric stores. So consider that if you're a whiz with your machine. And thank you so much for watching the video, and I hope that you found this helpful.